You may be seated. The court is now back in session. We will give the floor again to Nguyen Chi's defense to put further questions to this witness. You may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Kyo-en, we spoke before the break about the situation at the Ministry of Propaganda, and I'm referring to the physical situation, the structure of the buildings on the compound. And you have told us that you performed your duties in a smaller building away from the main building. And the room where you worked, did that room have windows of which you could see out?
No.
Response. The building in which I worked, actually there was like a shade, a walk-through shade into that building, and the actual place where I was, there was a window facing the north towards the road behind the building. So it is a room within that building where the entry was going through the shade. However, from that room there was no rear door, there was only a window.
And this window was facing north toward the road. And could you see the main building from that window, or was that in a different direction?
Response. The window from my office was facing the north, and there was a road to that north, and also there was another building across the road. It was known as Lycée Descartes. That's all.
So, do I understand you correctly, Mr. Kyo-en, that you could not see the main building of the Ministry of Propaganda from your window?
Response. The building behind my office was a former Lycée Descartes. But the big building as part of the ministry was actually at the front of my office. It was to the south of my office. because the building was facing the south, and when I entered through the rear of the building, at about the midsection, I would turn to the north, walking through a shade toward that office. And that office, that is my office, was next to the road to the south, to the north of that office.
Okay, that is clear. And if we ask you about the time that Hu Nim was in charge of the Ministry of Propaganda, was it... Now let me rephrase that. Could Hu Nim enter the main building of the Ministry of Propaganda and for you not to see him enter the main building because you were in your room working?
No.
Response. During the time that Hu Nim was there, I saw him even less than the later leaders. As I said earlier, I went to Phnom Penh after I left the province, and I was not familiar at all with the surrounding, and I just followed the instructions from those who were already there at that ministry. So I usually would just do the work assigned to me by my direct supervisor. But I did not know where Hu Nim's office is, although later on I knew where Nuon Chia's office was.
I understand your answer, and I understand you saying that you did not see Hu Nim very often. But my question is related to specifically the entering of the main building. From your office, could you see Hu Nim enter the main building, for example, in the morning when he went to work? Or could you not see that from your office?
No.
Response. The entry to the building was at the back of the building. I saw Hu Nim when he left his office and had lunch. Because sometimes when I went to lunch, I saw him there as well. That's how I knew him.
So you state that you saw Hu Nim when he was having lunch, and you state that the entrance to the main building was at the back of the office. Am I correct in understanding that you, for that reason, could not see the entrance of the main building, and that you therefore did not see Hu Nim arrive at work, but that you only saw him during lunch?
Your question does not really respond to my earlier reply. The main building was at the front, and my office was at the building, at the smaller one at the back. I usually entered my office through at the back of that building, and as I said earlier, there was a window from my office facing toward the road at the back. So I could not respond appropriately to your question. Are you referring or trying to get to any other building behind my office? There was one building across the road, but it was the former Lycée Descartes.
I apologize if it's not clear. Is it correct? Is it a correct summary of what you are telling us today, that from your workroom you could not see the entrance of the main building? Is that indeed the case?
Response. From where I sat at my office, I could not see. But outside, I could see the Lycée Descartes building. The entry into the office was at the back of that building. And of course, the building, there was a front entrance at the building as well, at the front of the building as well.
That's a very clear answer, and I think the confusion is now solved. Is it correct to state that staff members of the Ministry of Propaganda could enter that main building without you seeing those people entering the building?
Response. If I was in my office, I would not know when he entered. Sometimes I saw him by incident. For example, when he went for lunch, and I went for lunch as well. And sometimes he left for lunch earlier, and when I left my office for lunch, I saw him sitting there having lunch. That is my response.
That is clear. And if we go a little bit no, let me rephrase that question. You have stated that at a certain point, Nguyen Chia was in charge of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Can you exclude the possibility that Yun Yat, in fact, did come to the Ministry of Propaganda at that time when Nguyen Chia was in charge?
President, witness, please wait. The prosecution, you may proceed.
2 points, Mr. President. I think counsel misspoke when he referenced the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, if I heard correctly, but more importantly, he's calling for the witness to speculate by asking him whether he can exclude possibilities or not.
Indeed, I misspoke, Mr. President. Of course, I was referring to the Ministry of propaganda, and I'm not asking the witness to speculate. I'm asking the witness to provide an answer based on his knowledge of the situation at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs at the time. But I'm happy to rephrase the question, and the question would be, do you know, Mr. Witness, whether Yoon Yat ever came to the Ministry of Propaganda during the time that Nguyen Chia was in charge, according to you?
Response. Your question is whether Yoon Yat came to the office after he left and Nguyen Chia took charge. As I can recall partly, at the beginning of the replacement, sometimes Yoon Yat came, but later on it became less and less frequent. And for that reason, I have stated earlier that I did not know what was the arrangement at the upper level, but I could only see what happened on the ground. When Nguyen Chia was there, initially Yoon Yat came, but then it became less and less frequent and completely stopped. So I didn't know what was the process set by the upper level. And as you also asked me this morning about the work of Chaum, I could not know about the nature of the work of Chaum. I only knew the nature of my work, and I could only say regarding my work and experience.
That is exactly what I'm hoping for, that you will provide us answers based on what you know. Was it possible for Yoon Yat to be in the main office, the main building, without you seeing her because you were working in your room?
Response. When Yoon Yat came, she would engage in her work, but as I said from the beginning, my work did not involve much or directly from the upper level. The upper level could have contacted frequently with my direct supervisor, and I only received my instructions and assignment from my direct supervisor. So the fact that sometimes when I went to work, I just happened to see her when she came to work. And I did not know when she left, or sometimes when she left, and then I left for my work, I could see her briefly. That's how it happened.
So, when you say that the upper level could have had contacts with your supervisors, or with your supervisor without knowing it. Would you agree with me that that upper level might also have been Yun Yat?
President, witness, please wait. The prosecution, please proceed.
Again, Mr. President, we object as asking the witness to speculate. If the witness has knowledge of the specific persons who contacted his superior, that's fine. But to be asked to speculate whether Yun Yat, Nun Chea, Pol Pot, whether it was possible any of these people contacted his superior is improper speculation.
I will move on, Mr. President, and in fact I will repeat my earlier question because the answer was not entirely clear to me. Even at the time that Nun Chea was in charge, according to you, and even at a time when you state that Yun Yat stopped coming altogether, can you exclude the possibility that Yun Yat was still coming to the Ministry of Propaganda, but that you simply did not see her because you were in your room?
Response. Regarding the work of the leadership, I could not know because it was all in the hierarchical structure. I only knew about the assignment from my direct supervisor, but I did not know the communication or the contact between my direct supervisor and his above supervisor, or how many layers of supervision there were within the structure at the ministry. So that's how it went when it comes to the hierarchical structure. Because I hate my direct supervisor, for example, when it comes to the telegraph, and I could not know whether my direct supervisor would receive instruction from this person or that person.
Thank you. I think it's excuse me. I think it's more clear now. You have testified about Mr. Kim Voon, and you have testified about his role at the Ministry of Propaganda, and you've explained that he worked at a section that was visited more frequently by the leaders. Do you have any reason to not believe Kim Voon when he states that Yun Yat stayed in charge until January 1979? And I'm not asking you to speculate, and I'm not asking you to guess as to the reasons for Mr. Kim Voon for stating this. I'm asking you to base your answer on your knowledge of the Ministry of propaganda at the time. Do you know of any reason to not believe Kim Voon when he stated that Jun Yat was in charge until January 1979?
Mr. President, he's exactly asking the witness to speculate and to comment on the accuracy of another witness's testimony. That's exactly what he's asking to do. And he is in no position to speculate. I think it has become dangerous here to ask this witness to comment on Kim Voon's testimony when he wasn't here for all of that testimony. Counsel has suggested to this witness that Kim Voon had regular contact with Nuon Chea when he testified to nothing of the sort. He testified that he knew very little of Nuon Chea's role at the ministry because he was reassigned from that building to go to the Khmer Krom radio broadcast. So to ask this witness to speculate and to make suggestions to this witness about Kim Voon's testimony is entirely inappropriate.
I'm not asking the witness to speculate. I have read out the relevant transcripts of Mr. Kim Voon's statement, and this witness worked with Mr. Kim Voon. He knew what his positions were at the ministry, and he would be able to provide us with an answer. The witness has been very good at telling us when he does not know or when he feels he needs to speculate, and perhaps the witness knows of a reason why Kim Voon would be less accurate or less truthful on this matter, and I think it should be a question that is answered by the witness and certainly conducive to ascertaining the truth.
The President, the objection and the grounds for objection by the prosecution are valid and thus sustained. The witness needs not respond to this question. The President, can you please advise the court as to how much more time you envisage you will need, because the other two defense team has not advised the chamber directly as to how much time they will take to put the question to the witness in question. In case the other defense teams ask for an extra time, the chamber will not grant it unless otherwise you advised us in advance. Counsel Jasper Pau should respond to this first. We would like to know how much time you envisage you will need so that we can see how much time the other two defense team will likely take.
I would take less than half an hour, Mr. President. I've been informed that the Ying Sari defense team has no questions, but they can correct me if that has changed in the last 30 minutes. And I saw that the Kyosenpan defense team was on its feet, so perhaps she can enlighten the chamber.
Yes, Counsel, you may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good day to the Chamber. Let me simply reassure all of the parties that we do not have any questions for this witness either, so there aren't going to be any time problems in that connection. Thank you.
Thank you. How about the defense team for Mr. Ieng Sari? Counsel Angodom. Good afternoon, Mr. President. Good afternoon, Your Honors, and good afternoon to everyone in and around the courtroom. The defense team for Mr. Ieng Sari does not have any question to put to this witness. Thank you. The President, Thank you, defense teams. Now, the international lawyers for Mr. Nguyen Chia may proceed with your line of questioning.
Thank you, Mr. President. I want to ask you a question based on the two different locations where you and Mr. Kim Voon worked. You have stated that you worked in a smaller building outside the main building, and that Mr. Kim Voon worked in the main building where Nguyen Chia was conducting his activities. Who would be in a better position to see visitors that came to visit the Ministry of Propaganda, and then specifically the main building? Would that be Mr. Kim Voon, who was working in that main building, or would it be you who was working in a separate building with a window facing the Lycée Descartes?
The President, witness, please hold on. Prosecutor, you may proceed.
Yeah, my apologies for having to continue to get up, but again, counsel is asking this witness to speculate on the knowledge of Mr. Kim Voon, and he is ignoring the testimony of Kim Voon that when Nguyen Chia came to the ministry, he was transferred from that building to a different location. So again, counsel is asking this witness to speculate based on a mischaracterization of Kim Voon's testimony and facts.
Again, I take objection to the prosecutor constantly saying that I am mischaracterizing the statements of Mr. Kim Voon. I'm doing nothing of the sort. I've read the transcripts. Of course, Kim Voon bases his testimony on the things he saw. And that's all I'm doing. I am telling this witness what Kim Voon saw and about which he has testified here before the chamber. Now, to get to the objection, I'm not asking the witness to speculate about what Kim Voon knew or saw. I'm simply asking him to base his answer on the physical location of the buildings. I wasn't there. I hear one of the buildings has been destroyed. Since this is a witness that can testify as to from which position it would be easier to determine whether or not certain people visited the Ministry of Propaganda. Was it Kim Voon that worked in the main building where apparently the leaders were holding office, or was it this witness who was working in a room that faced north and Lycée Descartes? I'm not asking the witness to speculate. I'm asking the witness to provide an answer based on his understanding of the scene at the time.
The President. Witness is directed to respond to the last question posed by the defense counsel. If you know the answer to the question, if you don't, just say so. Response. If you ask me whether or not I saw people come in the main building, I would say that I did not see it as often as those who were working in the main building, because my building was behind this main building, so I did not see people come in. And in addition, at that time, the entrance to each building were blocked, and there were security guards over there. So in terms of the visitors who came in to visit staff members in the main building, I think that Kim Won was the person who was in the position to see the visitors coming in.
Thank you for that clarification. So I note that your experience at the Ministry of Propaganda with Nguyen Yat was that she, when she was in charge, came in every day. Is that a correct portrayal of your description of Nguyen Yat's activities at the Ministry of Propaganda?
Respond. That is correct. And I agree with your summary.
And you also state that at a certain point she came to the ministry less often, and that Nguyen Chia came to the office instead. Is that correct?
Respond. That is true. When I was there, I remember that Jun Jat was there for a period of time, and then later on I did not see her anymore, and then Nguyen Chia came to take charge. So there were three different stages, and I did not know the internal arrangement of the administration, and I did not know whether or not she remained in the ministry structure, but I no longer saw her. And that was the situation of the leadership of this ministry when I was there.
You just stated that you did not know whether or not she stayed in the ministry structure. Was there any way for you to know whether she stayed in the ministry structure?
Response. In terms of documentation of the structure, I did not know. I did not know who was responsible for what position of what ministry. And the reason I knew that Jun Jat was responsible for Ministry of Propaganda back then was from the words of my colleagues. But if you ask me whether or not I had seen any formal appointment in writing appointing her to the Ministry of Propaganda, I did not see such written appointment.
I put it to you that Kim Voon, who has based himself on his experiences at the Ministry of Propaganda, Kim Voon has stated that Yun Yat stayed in charge until the Vietnamese came in January 1979. What is your response to that if I confront you with that statement by Mr. Kim Voon?
Mr. President.
The President, witness, please hold on. Mr. Prosecutor, you may proceed.
Again, counsel is asking the witness to comment on the testimony of another person. In addition, I think this question has been asked many times. The witnesses answered many times as to what his knowledge was on this matter. So I think the question is also repetitive.
Mr. President, if I may, it is simply a follow-up question to the witness stating that he did not know what happened at the ministry level, what the arrangement was. And it was the witness who came up with that piece of information, so I should be allowed to explore that further.
The President. Counsel, please move on. We find that this question is repetitive and you are going back and forth in relation to the subject matter. I'm afraid that you're not making a good use of the court time. You should now move on.
Thank you, Mr. President. Do you know what Yun Yat went on to do after January 1979?
Response. The question is asking me. President interrupts. Witness needs not answer this question because it is beyond the scope of the facts before us.
Mr. President, I would like you to reconsider, because if it would be the case that Yun Yat stayed in the business of education, broadcasts and radio, that would be a relevant circumstance, and in fact evidence would suggest that is the case.
The President, this question is not relevant to the alleged fact, so the witness is directed not to respond to this question.
Mr. President, just to understand your ruling, are we not allowed to establish that Yun Yat stayed in the propaganda business, to put it bluntly, after 1979?
That is not allowed, and it was the ruling. It is the discretion of the chamber to decide whether or not any part of the questioning does not relate to the alleged facts in the closing order. That is to ensure the expeditious trial, and this is provided in the internal rules of the ECCC. The chamber has the discretion to set aside any questions that may not be conducive to ascertaining the truth. That is to include the question that is beyond the scope of the alleged facts in the closing order, and the chamber has repeatedly mentioned that to the parties.
Mr. QN, I would have more questions, but cannot pose those. And I will note for the record that if a contentious issue is whether or not Yoon Yat stayed in charge of the Ministry of Propaganda, it would clearly be relevant to establish whether she stayed in that line of business in the years after. I'm not allowed to go there, so I will conclude my testimony also noting for the record that we were not allowed to explore the full extent of your contacts with a very relevant witness, Mr. Kim Voon, something which is clearly relevant to explore your sources of knowledge. But I will rest. I thank you for your cooperation. You've been very helpful, and I wish you a good and safe trip back home. Also on behalf of Mr. Sonarun, we thank you for your answers.
The President. Mr. Kew-Ain, your testimony has come to an end. You may now be released and you may return to your home or to any place where you wish to go. On behalf of my colleague on the bench, I would like to thank you very much for your patience and your cooperation. Your testimony has contributed significantly to ascertaining the truth. When we wish you all the best of luck and safe journey back home. Court officer is instructed to facilitate his return back home with the witness support unit. And the reserve witness for WTC 428 may also return back home and have him back to the courtroom tomorrow morning. And for the remainder of today's hearing, the Chamber will hear the parties in relation to the status of health of Mr. Ieng Sari, who is being hospitalized at the Khmer Soviet Hospital. And we would like to hear the oral submission by parties, particularly to explore the avenues in order to go forward from here, taking into consideration the state of health of Mr. Ieng Sari. And Judge Sylvia Cartwright also made it clear to the party in relation to this issue as well yesterday. And the time is now appropriate for adjournment, and we will adjourn from now until 3, and then we will resume with the oral submission by parties. The court is now adjourned.